Your enemy is my enemy. The phrase, your enemy is my enemy, encapsulates a principle of alliance and shared interest, suggesting that two parties can unite against a common adversary. In this case, the enemy is Iran, and the alliance against Iran, Israel, and the Gulf Arab states. Iran views Israel as a regional rival, competing for influence in the Middle East. Therefore, any accommodation with the Arab states would be viewed negatively by Iran. Iran seeks to dominate and influence policies in the Middle East. Through proxy conflicts, Iran has been supporting various militias and groups in the region, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and certain factions in Syria and Iraq. The present war with Hamas in Palestine is funded by Iran. Building alliances. Israel has attempted to counter this by building alliances with certain Arab states that share concerns about Iran's influence. This has added a layer of complexity to the geopolitical dynamics in the Middle East. The conservative Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has in the past signaled its willingness to strike an unprecedented peace deal with Israel as it faces the threat from its two enemies, Iran and Sunni Islamist political opposition. The Camp David Accords. The peace treaty between Israel and Egypt, known as the Camp David Accords, was signed on March 26, 1979. The negotiations were facilitated by then U.S. President Jimmy Carter. The treaty played a significant role in establishing diplomatic relations between Israel and Egypt, and led to Egypt becoming the first Arab country to officially recognize Israel. Jordan. President Clinton played a key role in the peace process and worked closely with the leaders of Israel and Jordan to facilitate the negotiations that led to the signing of the Israel-Jordan Peace Treaty on October 26, 1994. The treaty marked the end of decades of hostility between the two nations. The treaty aimed at establishing a comprehensive peace and normalizing diplomatic and economic relations. The peace treaty between Israel and Jordan was a significant step towards stability in the region and paved the way for increased cooperation between the two countries. Abraham Accords. In September 2020, the Trump administration negotiated the Abraham Accords, a series of agreements between Israel and two Arab Gulf states, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and Bahrain. The accords marked a historic normalization of diplomatic and economic relations between Israel and these Arab nations. Iran has been doing everything it can to disrupt the accord, such as the recent attack on Israel by its proxy, Hamas in Gaza. Iran is not an Arab state. Iran is distinct from the Arab nations of the Middle East. The primary factor that sets Iran apart from Arab countries is its linguistic and ethnic identity. Iranians predominantly speak Persian, Farsi, an Indo-Iranian language, while Arabs speak various dialects of Arabic, a Semitic language. While both Iranians and Arabs are predominantly Muslim, the majority of Iranians practice Shia Islam. In contrast, the majority of Arabs adhere to Sunni Islam. A false premise. Iran views Israel as an illegitimate state created by Europeans through the dispossession of Palestinians, yet many countries in the Middle East and Africa were established by the colonial powers during the era of European colonialism. If the partitioning of Palestine was illegitimate, then half the countries in the Middle East and Africa would be illegitimate? Iran further justifies their position on the dispossession of the 500,000 Arabs, but forgets about the up to 1 million Jews that were kicked out of the Arab countries. Historical realities. The borders of numerous countries in these regions were often drawn arbitrarily by colonial powers without considering the ethnic, cultural, or historical realities of the indigenous populations. This process, known as the partitioning of Africa and the Middle East, occurred mainly in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The arbitrary borders created by colonial powers sometimes led to ethnic and tribal tensions, as different groups found themselves within the same political boundaries. The legacy of colonialism continues to shape the geopolitical landscape and dynamics in many countries, including Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Israel and Palestine in the Middle East, and Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Egypt, Algeria, and Rhodesia in Africa. The Gulf states, referring to the countries bordering the Persian Gulf in the Middle East, were not directly created by colonial powers in the same manner as some African and Asian nations. However, the region was influenced by colonial powers, particularly the British and the Ottomans. The borders of these states were often drawn during the 20th century based on treaties, agreements, and geopolitical considerations. These Gulf states include Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Oman. What is Iran's real opposition to Israel? Iran's opposition to Israel is about who controls the Muslim world. Iran's main rival is Saudi Arabia. The Saudi-Iranian rivalry has important implications for regional stability and U.S. national security interests. Iran has historically sought to play a prominent role in the Muslim world and has aspired to be a regional power in the Middle East. Iran's pursuit of influence in the region has been manifested through various means, including diplomatic efforts, alliances, and support for proxy groups. Iran has formed alliances with Shia-majority countries such as Iraq and Syria and supported groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and various militias in Iraq and Syria. Any alliance with Israel and the Sunni Arab States threatens Iran's domination of the area. Strategic decisions leading to the present. Israel-Hamas conflict. The present conflict between Israel and Hamas can be analyzed in the context of various strategic decisions made by different U.S. administrations. Firstly, in 1979, the Carter administration played a role in the removal of the Shah of Iran, leading to the establishment of the radical Islamic Republic. This shift in power dynamics had a lasting impact on the region. Another significant decision occurred during the Bush administration when Saddam Hussein, the leader of Iraq, was removed in 2003. Despite his oppressive regime, Saddam Hussein served as a counterforce to Iran in the Middle East. The power vacuum created by his removal contributed to regional instability and altered the balance of power. During the Obama administration, a notable decision was the release of billions of dollars to Iran as part of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, in 2015. While aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear program, the injection of funds into the Iranian economy allowed Iran to be able to use the funds to support groups hostile to Israel and other Arab states. The Biden administration's decisions are also under scrutiny, particularly in relation to Iran. The choice not to enforce the Iran oil embargo instituted by the Trump administration and the subsequent release of additional billions of dollars to Iran has empowered Iran to fund groups like Hamas, directly contributing to attacks on Israel. In summary, the strategic decisions made by the Carter, Bush, Obama, and Biden administrations have collectively influenced the current dynamics in the Middle East, allowing Iran to fund attacks on Israel and other Arab states through various proxy groups, including Hamas. Radical Islam and the world economy. Iran's promoting of the radical interpretations of Islam and support for groups like Hezbollah-Hamas has resulted in regional conflicts with several Arab countries and Israel. The region, as a result, has been divided into two armed camps on the basis of political and religious ideology. Iran's potential of controlling or influencing the Middle Eastern countries would have significant and complex implications for the world economy. It would disrupt global energy markets as the Middle East is a major oil-producing region. Any disruption in the oil supply could lead to a spike in oil prices, affecting economies heavily dependent on energy imports. It would disrupt global trade routes, especially those related to oil transportation. This would result in higher shipping costs and disruptions to supply chains, affecting industries worldwide. 40% of Asia-Europe trade normally goes through the area, including a huge amount of oil and diesel fuel for import-dependent Europe. About 30% of global container traffic and more than 1 million barrels of crude oil per day typically head through the Suez Canal. It would lead to capital flight from the affected countries and potentially spill over into global financial markets. A critical juncture. The United States stands at a critical juncture in the pursuit of peace and stability in the Middle East. Past actions played a significant role contributing to the instability in the area through its foreign policy decisions, military interventions, and alliances. The removal of Saddam Hussein in 2003 led to a power vacuum in the area, and the subsequent instability allowed various factions and influences to vie for control. The result was that Iran increased its influence in the region. Recognizing the evolving geopolitical landscape, it is imperative for the U.S. to robustly support the Abraham Accords, fostering collaboration with regional partners along with Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. This strategic alignment, along with reimposing the embargo on Iranian oil, will create a vital counterbalance against the influence of Iran, ultimately contributing to the restoration of peace in the region. Both Egypt and Jordan have historically played pivotal roles in regional stability and have demonstrated a commitment to peace. Their inclusion in the Abraham Accords, along with Saudi Arabia, would not only strengthen the collective resolve, but also leverage their influence to counter Iranian aggression. Nature abhors a vacuum. In the absence of a stable influence in the Middle East attributed to global events, has allowed radical Islam, spearheaded by Iran, to gain prominence. The United States has an opportunity to address this by forming a strategic alliance with key regional players, including Israel, the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan, in an effort to counterbalance Iran's influence.